When I started this YouTube channel about a month and a half ago, and like 10 years too late, one of the ideas that I had was that it would be fun to read older self-help book and to just give a review and see what is still good about them and what's not so good about them. For some reason, I decided to start with Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. For sure, I expected it to feel dated and that it had not necessarily aged very well, but I still thought there would be some interesting stuff in there because it was such a huge hit in the 90s. But honestly, about a third or like halfway through my reading, I got very disgusted by this book. What was kind of like funny at the beginning really quickly became so sexist that it was intolerable and very difficult to read. And just as I was about to retire the book, I learned that John Gray, the author, actually received a fake PhD from like correspondence courses to a now defunct fraudulent university. And that somewhat motivated me to like take it back and instead of giving like a proper review, just talking about the things about this book that are cringe. Why not make fun of it one last time before retiring this book in a dark cave forever? First thing to say, if I have not made myself very clear, is do not read this book. There's absolutely no reason for you to put yourself through this. It is vicious and it's relentless in its sexism. Like, I'm not joking. One of the co-hosts from the podcast By the Book, who did an episode on Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, actually recorded herself bursting into angry tears while reading the book because she got so angry and so insulted by the writing. On top of that, I advise not to read it because it's actually very poorly written. I actually had to sort of like skim through whole sections of the book because it was written in such a like convoluted way and circular way, and I just also could not handle the sexism that much. Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus was published in 1992, and it was the biggest nonfiction bestseller from the 90s. So much so, somehow, that it sort of like spun out a kingdom of Mars and Venus books. John Gray, according to Wikipedia, wrote 15 other books with Mars and Venus in the title, including somehow 5 that he released in the same year, in the year 2000. And one of these 5 books is, you guessed it, a diet book. They were also seminars, there were vacations for couples, there was a play, there was a clothing line, there were travel guides, and like so much more that came out of this one book. Honestly, I think John Gray could probably teach RuPaul how to make profits from just one idea. The book kind of boringly argues that men and women are inherently different and that this is the reason why there's so much discord in romantic relationships. And so after describing these two species, the book offers like a laundry list of rules to follow if you want to make your relationship better. It's pretty awful, but I'm not interested in talking you through his argument or even debunking them. It's really not worth my time and definitely not worth yours. What we are interested in this video is cringe. Cringe happens when we feel embarrassment or awkwardness at an action. It can be our own action, like remembering the time in high school where I mostly only wear orange pants because I thought this was my whole personality. True story. But it's much funnier when the awkwardness comes from the action of someone else. John Gray is absolutely unaware of his toxic masculinity and how bad it is in most of the book. And while some parts are insulting, some parts are really funny, and I want to focus on these. Number 1 on the list of things that are cringe about this book is Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. Yeah, I didn't have to look very far for this first one. Honestly, this is more something that's stupid about the book than something that is cringe, but the further along you read through the book, the more cringe it becomes. So about a month ago, when I blissfully knew nothing about this book, I thought that the Mars and Venus thing would be like a cute metaphor to just start a conversation and underline the fact that men and women don't always see eye to eye or understand each other. But progressively through the book, it becomes much more than that. Like the further you go through the book, the more it seems like John Gray is stepping away from the metaphor and just trying to convince us that it's just true. And a lot of his arguments are just based on like, well, you cannot blame men for being like this because that's just what life is on Mars. And he really makes it sound like men and women have only like coexisted for a handful of years, like maybe 100, maybe less. It's really awkward. For example, when the Martian and Venusians first got together, they encountered many of the problems with relationships we have today. Everyone knew that people from Mars and people from Venus spoke different languages. So when there was a conflict, they didn't start judging or fighting, but instead pull out their phrase dictionaries to understand each other more fully. If that didn't work, they went to a translator for help. That is, like, in short, the main premise of the book, that we don't communicate well, which I guess is a fair point, but he erases like centuries of cohabitation, capitalism, sexism, patriarchy, trauma, and inequality, and instead just says like, before, when we still lived on two different planets, there were translators that exist, and it keeps referring to this book as like the equivalent of that translator. He erases like all complexity of human interactions and always, like always, rely on this metaphor to explain everything that he talks about in the book. Remember that men are from Mars. They are not automatically motivated to do the little things. They give less, not because they do not love you, but because they believe they have already given their share. Try not to take it personally. And the further you go through the book, the more irritating that becomes. And honestly, at some point, I yelled at my book, like, this is not true. This has never happened. And it really becomes super cringe. And anyway, I'm getting angry again. So let's jump to number 2. The number 2 cringe thing is how much the Venusians need the Martians. The book never really explains why, except that it's like in the nature of the people who live on Venus to really like crave for the attention of people living on Mars. But Venusians are described to be deeply unhappy without Martians. Like, the author describes Venus as much nicer than Mars. Like, it's a place where people collaborate. It's a place where people communicate well, are aware of their emotions, they care for each other, they support and they help each other. But deeply, deep inside, Venusians are so depressed because something's missing. When the Venusians became depressed, to feel better, they formed circles and began talking with one another about their problems. But this didn't seem to relieve the depression. They stayed depressed for a long time, until, through their intuition, they experienced a vision. Through their intuition, they experienced a vision. If anyone knows what this means, please let me know, because I'm at a loss. Strong and wondrous beings, the Martians, would be coming across the universe to love, serve, and support them. Suddenly, they felt cherished. Isn't that beautiful? Anyway, it's just repeated throughout the book how deeply unhappy Venusians are without the Martians. There's nothing about social pressure to get married, social pressure to have kids, the fact that up until very recently, women were not allowed to open their own bank account or go to work or vote. Nope. Just, a deep void that Venusians filled without the Martian. In an unspoken language, the Venusians communicated loud and clear. We need you. Your power and strength can bring us great fulfillment, filling a void deep within our being. I guess my lesbian friends must really be missing out on something. Number 3 cringe thing is the translator. The translator is a big part of the middle of the book. And as the name suggests, it's the section in which Gray sort of like takes common phrases that men and women say and translate them for the other species. This section is not only like difficult to read and a bit boring because of the way it's formatted, but it also makes very little sense if you actually slow down and think about it. If we take one example of a couple that is having a conversation that's about to become an argument, and in this conversation, a wife tells her husband, I feel like everyone is ignoring me. And the husband's answer is, I'm sure some people notice you. This is another premise of the book, that men only like giving solution, which honestly, except for this stupid gender divide thing, is not wrong. Like, some people listen to listen, and some people listen to give solution. And like, it would be better if everybody was able to navigate both of these things. But instead of saying that, Gray just uses a Mars versus Venus translator. And what's cringe is that the translations are very long. And I just cannot get over a book that tells me that a man who answers, I'm sure some people noticed you, to the phrase, everyone ignores me, would be able to respond to this translation. Today, I'm feeling ignored and unacknowledged. I feel as though nobody sees me. Of course, I'm sure some people see me, but they don't seem to care about me. I suppose I'm also disappointed that you've been so busy lately. I really do appreciate how hard you're working, and sometimes I start to feel like I'm not important to you. I'm afraid your work is more important than me. Would you give me a hug and tell me how special I am to you? Just in case you're wondering, 4 of the, I think, 10 translation phrase from women ends with some form of like, would you please give me a hug and reassure me? So we're good with that. Number 4 cringe thing is the knight in shining armor. Quick trigger warning, this is, I think, the worst section of the book, except maybe for the part that implies that women are not interested in sex and only do it to score points with their husband. This part makes no sense, and it's so bad that I actually had to read it twice because I was like, wait, there's no way I just read what I think I read. But unfortunately, I did. So Gray insists that inside every man is a knight in shining armor who wants to save a princess. I mean, I certainly don't feel this way, but as a queer man, this book is absolutely not written for me, and Gray just does not acknowledge that I exist. So I guess this was not for me, and there is no knight inside of me. Maybe there's a princess. I hope there's a dragon, I guess. Anyway, he launches into this 2-page story about a knight who saves a princess from a dragon and they fall in love. So far, pretty basic, but nothing to cringe too hard about. But then, for some reason, the knight leaves, and then when he comes back, there's another dragon attacking the kingdom. And when he rushes to help, the princess tosses him a rope and says, I think with this tool it would be easier to kill the dragon. And guess what? She's right, and it is easier to kill the dragon. And everybody in the town is happy, except the knight, who feels emasculated. Anyway, the knight leaves the town and comes back several times, and each time there is a new dragon attacking the kingdom, and each time the princess is just there to support her knight and to help with killing the dragon by bringing some new ideas and new weapons. And again, it feels like everybody's happy because they're apparently becoming very good at killing dragons. But one day, the knight goes to another kingdom where there's another princess who's also attacked by another dragon. And this princess does not offer help or support, only gratitude. And then the knight leaves the first princess to go live happily ever after with this new helpless princess. And Gray, in his writing, has the audacity to explain that it's the first princess's fault if her knight left and cheated on her and left her because she should have refrained to try to help. For a moment, he is confused, but then he remembers how he had felt before he knew the princess, back in the days when he only carried a sword. With a burst of renewed confidence, he throws off the noose and the poison and charges the dragon with his trusted sword. He slays the dragon, and the town people rejoice. The knight in shining armor never returned to his princess. He stayed in this new village and lived happily ever after. He eventually married, but only after making sure his new partner knew nothing about nooses and poison. This is the part of the book where I thought, that's it. I will not do a video about this piece of garbage. And I had to take a break from reading. I actually feel like I need to take a break from this video because it's making me angry again. Ultimately, I decided to keep this moment and to put it in the video, mostly to take a moment to tell all women, princesses or not, that if a man is abusive, cheats on you, is rude, dumps you because he feels emasculated when you offer help, just run away and find someone better. Nobody needs a knight that is so fragile that his shining armor crumbles because you have a brain. And honestly, I'm horrified that this story blaming a woman for a man cheating on her made it into a bestseller in the 90s. But let's put this horror behind us because we can make fun of John Gray some more and make fun of his version of masculinity. So let's continue with cringe moment number 5, the fact that men will improve. One of the most important thing in that book for John Gray is that women should never ask that a man changes. She should never try to improve her husband in any way. She should never step in to offer him solutions to his problems or never suggest that he could seek professional help or something like that. Instead, she should just shut up, give him space, and more importantly, constantly praise him and validate him. Gray is actually very insistent about that last part. But I guess he couldn't just tell women, stay with his shitty husband and validate him and love him regardless what he'll do, and you'll have a lovely marriage and he will be so in love with you. So instead, he invented, mostly out of nowhere, or I guess mostly because Martians are this way, that when Martians are left alone and validated for who they are, they just magically improve and get better in the most vague way possible. I guess part because they want to be better for the beautiful creature that supports them, and in part because apparently when they're ready, they will ask for help, and at this point, they might be ready to listen their wife's advice. This doesn't mean that a man does not need comforting love. Women need to understand that they are nurturing him when they abstain from offering unsolicited advice to solve his problems. To withhold correcting a man or trying to improve him are ways to nurture him. Giving advice can be nurturing only when he asks directly for it. A man looks for advice or help only after he has done what he can do alone. If he receives too much assistance or receives it too soon, he will lose his sense of power and strength. He becomes either lazy or insecure. Yeah, insecure sounds about right. I mean, there might be some truth into the fact that unsolicited advice can be tiring, but I just can't with a book that tells me that a person who's never held responsible for their behavior, who can be toxic, who can be abusive, and there will be no repercussion, who is never taught how to ask help, who is never taught how to receive support, and who is just constantly, unconditionally validated for everything that they are and every action that they take, will become a better person. That just makes no sense to me. And on top of that, the super cringe moment of that is that the book tells me that when it's a man who's offering unsolicited advice to a woman, they love it because they feel cherished and they feel loved. When a man is carving the turkey for Thanksgiving and his partner keeps offering advice on how and what to cut, he feels mistrusted. He resists her and is determined to do it his own way. On the other hand, if a man offers his assistance in cutting the turkey, she feels loved and cared for. I'm sure she does. Anyway, number 6 cringe moment is only this one sentence. Even today, on Earth, while women fantasize about romance, men fantasize about powerful cars, faster computers, gadgets, gizmos, and the new, more powerful technology. I can't believe that this was a bestseller. But also, am I really surprised? Anyway, number 7 is the car incident. Of course, any book on straight relationships written in the 90s had to have a scene where a man is driving and he gets lost. Oh, the years before Google Maps. At this point, I don't think it will shock you a lot, but when Mary and Tom get lost and circle around one block for 20 minutes, Mary should never suggest that they ask for direction. Instead, she should be grateful that Tom gets them to their destination eventually. Mary had no idea that when Tom became lost and started circling around the same block, it was a very special opportunity to love and support him. The next time he was lost, instead of offering help, oh yeah, the author put quotation mark around the word help quite a few times in this book. She restrained herself from offering any advice, took a deep, relaxing breath, and appreciated in her heart what Tom was trying to do for her. Tom greatly appreciated her warm acceptance and trust. We all appreciate your warm acceptance and trust, Mary. Or maybe we all appreciate that you set the bar so low that there is literally nothing that Tom can do to pass underneath it. Number 8 things that are cringe is the story of Sarah and Larry. This one's a bit long, and what's the most cringe is what comes at the end. Like it's the case in many self-help books, throughout the writing, the author talks about supposed couples who came to his seminars and got better, and then he relays the stories in the book. And Sandra and Larry had the most unhinged story. They've been together for 12 years, and Sandra wants a divorce because her husband walks out of the room each time that she's trying to have a conversation with him. And she describes him as being heartless and cold. But somehow he wants to save the marriage, and they go into John Gray's seminar. And then, through the wise words of the author of the book, Sandra realized that all the problems in the couple are her fault. It's not phrased exactly like this in the book, but this is really what it means. And most of the time that I can recall in the book where a couple comes to the seminar, there might be like one exception to prove me wrong, but most of the time it's the woman who realizes that she had been wrong, and she normally bursts out in tears when she realizes that at the same time, and then the couple gets better. After hearing about men and rubber bands in the seminar, she bursts into tears of forgiveness for her husband. She realized that his problems was their problem. She recognized now that she had contributed to their problem. Remember that their problem was that he would just walk away when she was trying to talk with him? Anyway, I remember in our first year of marriage, I would open up, talk about my feelings, and he would just walk away. And after that happened a few times, I gave up. I was not willing to be hurt again. But I didn't give him a chance. I stopped being vulnerable. Anyway, apparently after the seminar, they were good and they were happy because she had learned to love and appreciate his silences. But that seems unhinged to me after like 12 years of marriage, in which this following sequence is one of their like regular conversation as a couple. How was your day? Okay. What happened? The usual. What do you feel like doing this weekend? I don't care. What do you want to do? Do you want to invite our friends over? I don't know. Do you know where the TV schedule is? Oh, Larry. Such a delight. Why don't you talk to me? Do you love me? Of course I love you. I married you. How could you love me? We never talk anymore. How can you just sit there and say nothing? Do you care? At this point, Larry would get up and go for a walk. When he came back, he would act as though nothing had happened. I'm not here to blame the victim, but Sandra, I feel like you can do better. Number 9 is things that don't exist. Honestly, this is not about cringe. It's just things that annoyed me and I wanted to talk about it in the video. It's just a list of things that do not exist in the universe of this book, and I just wanted to point some of them out. I'm sure I'm forgetting so many, but in my list of things that do not exist in the universe of this book, there is homosexuality, gender nonconformity, men whose toxicity and abuse crosses a line, a man who will admit to making a mistake to a woman who like sex, emotional or physical abuse, people who are not Caucasian and middle class, a woman who does not just love shopping with her friends, and finally, a couple who does not immediately get better after attending one of John Gray's seminar. And finally, for number 10, is just a quick one because we are very ready to retire this book. But in one last effort to make women docile and accommodating, John Gray writes this about Venusians. The Venusians were not offended when Martians were easily distracted. When a Venusian talked and a Martian became distracted, she would very politely stop talking, stand there, and wait for him to notice. I mean, what else can I add except maybe next time let's not give that much attention to a Martians with a fake PhD. Anyway, thank you everyone for listening. If there's a book that you would like me to review in another video, please let me know in the comment. And until next time, please keep talking about mental health as much as you can and stay safe.